Hi everyone, I'm Katie and I am joining Mama Mio for their Mamahood virtual event to talk about my IVF journey and also frequently asked questions. So I live in Devon with my husband Tom and my dog Stan, and we started trying to conceive 5 years ago, but unfortunately about 2 weeks before our wedding as well, we miscarried, and it was absolutely devastating, completely changed our lives forever. And then we fast forward a year and I fell pregnant naturally again. Unfortunately that also ended in a loss, and we just didn't know what was wrong or what was happening. We tried to conceive again for another 2 years, and without success we decided to seek help from the GP, and they did the initial tests which all came back normal, and then referred us to our local fertility clinic. When we got referred to the fertility clinic, they did some more advanced tests on both of us and they came back normal as well. So we got diagnosed with what's called unexplained infertility, which is frustrating because in the back of our heads we could still get pregnant naturally, but obviously it wasn't happening. But at the same time we were very grateful that there wasn't anything wrong, and maybe we could still get pregnant naturally. But we got the go-ahead to start IVF at the end of December 2019, and so we started our IVF journey. We went in with a very positive attitude. I was conceived through IVF, my mum and dad had me through IVF, so I went in thinking it worked for them first time, so why wouldn't it work for me? I didn't really know much about IVF myself, and in a way I was happy that I didn't know too much, but also I wasn't prepared. I started with all the IVF medication. I did what's called a down regulation cycle first, which meant everything got shut down essentially going into menopause, so they wanted to make sure that my ovaries were shut down to start the next step. That included injections daily, which were a little bit difficult, but I kind of kept thinking this is what has to be done, so I need to just carry on and get on with it. My symptoms were very much like menopause symptoms, very tired, hot sweats, mood swings up and down. I really just ate quite a lot, and then the next step, so a scan to make sure that my ovaries had shut down properly and we were ready for the next step, which was stimulation to make my follicles bigger in the hope that there's enough to get eggs from, to retrieve the eggs from. So that was another load of injections each day. And then we had another scan to check the follicles, which had grown to the way that they liked. And I knew they had because I could feel way more on my left side. It was quite uncomfortable. And then we take what's called the trigger injection 24 hours before egg retrieval. So that releases the eggs. And then we got the call to say that we could go in the 24 hours after. I had to take Voltarol, pessary, and then I just had some sort of pain relief through the cannula in my vein. So I knew everything was going on. I could pretty much feel everything. I heard everything. A lot of people get put to sleep or sedated for that. I didn't. I didn't think it was as bad as I thought, but it was a little bit sore afterwards. And then we waited in a room to get told the news of how many eggs we got, and then we got told that Tom's morphology for his sperm sample that day was lower than expected than before, so we were going to have what's called a split cycle, which means half the eggs would be fertilised through ICSI, which means they inject the eggs with Tom's sample, and then half the eggs will be fertilised with conventional IVF. So we then got told that we got 17 eggs, so that's quite a large number, which was really good. And then it was just a waiting game for the next 5 days. So they have to wait for them to fertilise, to then divide, and then hopefully become blastocysts, which are day 5 embryos. So we managed to get, every day we got a phone call of how many survived each day, which at the time was upsetting, because you think, oh, we start with a big number and then it goes down and down and down. Doesn't for everybody though. So we were very lucky. We ended up with 6 embryos, and we went ahead with a fresh embryo transfer on day 5. So I went in the same room that I had egg retrieval. They put a scanner on my tummy to check where my uterus was and whether it's going in the right place. They put a catheter through, which then the embryo is put through the catheter, and hopefully that's done the job and got me pregnant. We then have what's called a 2-week wait. By this point I've already started progesterone medication, which helps the lining sustain a pregnancy, and then we have to wait for the 2 weeks, which some clinics it's 10 days, some it's 11, 12, 14. Our clinic was 11 days. So we just waited. We thought everything was working, we thought everything was going to be fine, and then 5 days in I had a bleed, which I knew wasn't good news. Anyway, I rang the clinic and they said to carry on as normal, keep taking the medication, and then still do a test on official test day, which I did, and that was negative, which I knew. Then a few months went by. We waited for our debrief appointment to discuss what happened, and they can't really tell you any answers. They don't know why or what's happened. I put it down to progesterone. I wasn't having enough, or I felt like it wasn't being absorbed, so they changed my medication a little bit, and then we started with another frozen embryo transfer, which we had again, so the same sort of start the medication to control my cycle, go into menopause, and then take a medication to thicken up my lining this time, and then also progesterone again to maintain that lining, and then they were going to transfer another embryo. And that all, it sort of went to plan. There was some little ifs and buts and things that changed along the way, which is very common with IVF. It's not straightforward. And so we had our first frozen embryo transfer, which after the 2-week wait, so on official test day, that ended in a negative test again. So that was our second embryo failed, which did not work. We then went for another transfer again a few months later, started the process, injections, menopause, all of that again. We had our frozen embryo transfer, and this time during the 2-week wait I tested early, which I wouldn't advise to do because you can get too excited, which I did. I tested early, but I tested positive. This is the first positive we had for a good 5 years, so we were absolutely over the moon. It was around my husband's 30th as well, so we did some celebrating with family, and it was positive for 10 days, and then the tests were getting lighter, which I didn't think was good, so I knew something was wrong. We then tested probably about 5 days after official test day, and it was negative. So I had what was called a chemical pregnancy, which means I was pregnant for a little bit, and then it's essentially a loss. And so we were at the beginning again. We then started our third frozen embryo transfer in March 2020. I was 3 weeks into medication, and as we all know, that's when the pandemic hit, and I got a phone call probably about 10 minutes before I was meant to have a scan to check that my ovaries had shut down, and I was already in that menopausal state again, and it got cancelled, which was devastating because we didn't know how long we'd have to wait. They cancelled all the fertility treatment all over the country. There was nothing we could do. It was just a waiting game. It took my cycle a long time to get back to normal because they'd put me on medication, and then obviously I didn't carry through the rest of the medication, so it was just a bit of a mess. And then we got through the pandemic. Well, we haven't got through it, we're still in it, but eventually they got the government to say that we could open clinics in May 2020. My clinic took a little bit longer to open up. They had to get things put in place, and then we got the go ahead to start again, and I started medication for my next transfer in August, and it was a long cycle this time. I don't know why it was so long, but I was put into the menopause state for quite a while. We were positive. We thought this has to happen. We've only got 2 embryos after this. I did get myself mentally and physically in a better position before I started running and eating a lot better. I don't know if that's the reason why, but it definitely had an impact, I think. So we went ahead with our 4th transfer on the 2nd of September 2020, and I started testing 5 days after transfer, and it was positive again. But obviously with our losses before and what happened with the previous cycle, it was a happy time but also a nerve-wracking time. I then got to official test day and it was still positive. Probably about 6 weeks pregnant, I started spotting, which my history is not good, but it's very, very normal and very common. And so I ended up having some bloods which were good. The HCG levels were rising, and I had a scan which for the first time we saw the heartbeat of our baby, which was completely surreal, completely in shock. We've never been in this position before. Those first few months until you're 12 weeks pregnant, they were very, very difficult. I was happy but also very anxious. It was just a worrying time, so I had a lot of scans. My dad jokes that he's the most photographed baby before he's even born, so we've probably had about 10 scans, but everything's absolutely fine. We found out we were having a boy, and we had a surprise gender reveal over at Christmas time, which was lovely. And I am now, whilst making this video, I am now 34 weeks pregnant, and we are due in May, and we are expecting our rainbow IVF baby boy. So it's took a long time, and it's still so surreal. It's crazy that we're actually getting the chance to be parents, which we never thought would happen, and we're just so grateful that we've been given this opportunity. So, most frequent questions I get asked are, how long does IVF take? So a cycle can take 4 to 6 weeks. It's very different for everyone. You can have a short protocol or a long protocol. It all depends, and everybody's on different medication, different timings, but it's around 4 to 6 weeks. Can you transfer more than one embryo? Privately, I believe it's probably your choice, but depending on your age, then it's advised to only transfer one, and other health conditions maybe. On the NHS, they, again, depending on your age, they only like to transfer one, simply because that one, and I know many couples have transferred one and they've split into twins. So if you could transfer 2, they could split into quads, which is obviously a risk to them and to yourself. So that's why they tend to only let you transfer one. Can I decide whether to have a boy or a girl transferred? No, not in this country. It's illegal in this country. I believe in America and other countries they do have gender selection, but it's not allowed in this country. What advice would you give? I would say to get yourself mentally and physically prepared. Do the research. Don't go overboard with diets and stopping things. I mean, you can, it's good advice to, but do it gradually. I think sometimes it's more of a shock to your system to just stop. If you're going to change your diet, or like I cut out caffeine, I did that slowly and gradually. I didn't just stop it. I think that's a good thing to do. Don't compare with other people going through the same cycle. Everyone's different. Everyone has different body shapes, different health issues, different reasons why they've had to have IVF. It's not the same, and it's not going to be the same outcome, unfortunately, for everyone. I would try and go in with a positive attitude, which is very difficult after you've waited for so long, and it is frustrating that you've had to go down this path. But I would get as much support around you as possible. Joining the lovely Instagram TTC community helped me so much. I didn't have anybody to talk to before, didn't know anybody going through it, and it just really helped me to connect with other women and men that are going through a fertility journey. And it opened my eyes to what options there are. So if IVF didn't work for you, there's so many other options that could work and that you can try. So that gave me peace that we will try and do whatever it takes, and we'll see what happens.